is air traffic control. You're cleared for takeoff.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
And we're going to go ahead and get started. And so I'm Tracy Henry, and I'm with Sam's Club. And I have the pleasure today of moderating the discussion around upward mobility. So before we get deep into that discussion, I want to just introduce our panel first. And to my left, I've got Juli McWhorter, and she is the Chief Executive Officer at Northwest Medical Center in Bentonville. And based on her bio, you have a lengthy experience in the nursing industry in general, but has progressed her way up as Chief Nursing Officer, Chief Operating Officer, Chief Administrator Officer, and Chief Quality Officer before now being Chief Executive Officer. So definitely going to be valuable to our conversation today. And then in the middle, excuse me, we've got Ashley Calderon from Walmart, but she also is the founder of HERizon, which is a nonprofit platform focused on empowering women and the Latino community through mentorship, career access, and community partnerships. So excited to hear your input today. And lastly, on the end, we have Stephanie Magnuson, who is the Vice President of Human Resources for Tyson Foods Poultry segment. And she leads the people strategy for one of the company's largest and most operationally complex business units. And so you drive talent strategy, leadership development initiatives, among other things. So all three are perfect for our discussion today on the science of upward mobility, which sounds really interesting. So I'm going to kick us off today. We'll talk about 35 minutes across the panel, and then we'll leave about 10 minutes for questions. So as we go through this conversation, think about what you might want to ask at the end. And if any of us need to speak up, just kind of wave your hand or something, because we are competing with that other room. So appreciate your help with that. So Juli, we will start with you. And I'd like to first just say, how do we even define what upward mobility is? Not just in terms of title or pay, but overall career growth.
Well, I'm going to stand up because I maybe you guys can't hear me. Well, with like my journey has been significantly impacted by just me taking ownership and my capability and my of what I was able to. Like, I started out as a PCA. I'm a little nervous. Let me take a deep breath. I started as a PCA at Northwest Medical Center Springdale 34 years ago and had no idea that I would eventually become a CEO. And people go, how did you do that? So my definition of and how I see upper mobility is how you're able to influence, how you take on things and take ownership of things and your capability of taking on those things. It's basically anyone in your hospital or your organization. It could be a nurse who is the go-to person because she is extremely talented in IV starts, or it's your registrar who performs does process improvement. And so she starts being recognized by her boss, and then her boss is boss, and that's how she moves upward. That's really how I moved up. I just worked hard. I didn't say no. And I really like the topic about title and compensation because I really honestly did not worry about that. And I know that's hard in times like this. It really is hard. But as I'm now negotiating my new salary with my new company, we were sold. I've already outkicked my coverage of my expectations for my career. I went to school to be a nurse. I did not go to school to be a CEO. So I'm living my purpose. So that is my definition of upper mobility and how you do it. So
Thank you. And Stephanie, I'll look to you now from an organizational perspective. How is upward mobility actually defined and measured?
So, good afternoon, everybody. And what I would say, upward mobility, Tracy and I were talking here at the beginning. It's kind of a heavy topic. And so, first of all, I'm going to be a little vulnerable, but who all here is from Tyson? Lord. Okay. All right. What's said in the room stays in the room. Okay, guys. But I would say don't necessarily always think of upward mobility as promotions. When I think of upward mobility, I think of momentum. So momentum over movement. And so what I mean by that is I'm an HR for poultry, and we are really big on creating robust succession plans. The higher you go in an organization, the more you're going to get a lot of feedback, and you're going to get a lot of, I will say, good criticism of what you need to do to round out yourself. Look at those things as growing moments and not as challenges. So I'll be vulnerable for a second. My entire career, I've supported, half has been talent acquisition, half has been in the kind of the HR business partner talent strategy space. But all in those careers until now, I've been corporate. So my brand is all, Stephanie's very corporate. And so now, guys, I am in operations. I managed HR for all of our chicken plants. And so that's very different. But that is an experience I had to have and I needed in order to be considered for that next role. So that was a lateral move for me, right? But that is important because I needed to round out myself. And I can already see it being in this position for about a year. I can already see, as I didn't necessarily see it as growing, the leaders that I work with, they do see it as growing. And so again, it's kind of trusting the process a little bit and addressing your gaps and growing in those different moments.
I like that. Just a momentum over movement. And then Ashley, how does that definition resonate with the communities that you serve?
Yeah, I think you hit spot on momentum over movement. Hello, everyone. Ashley Calderon. First of all, I want to thank you guys for being here and just taking some time out of your day to listen to our perspective and just being here with us today. But for me, I would say in the communities that I serve, especially focus on women leadership through Infinite Horizon, you know, upward momentum is not easily defined or accessible sometimes. So we have these big dreams, but in reality, how the heck do we make it happen, right? We say we want to dream big, we want to chase our dreams, but what are the networks that we're connecting with, right? Who are the people that we're meeting to be able to learn new skills, to be able to get feedback? How are we being intentional to set ourselves forward towards that upward momentum? And I would say you guys are doing the right thing, being here today, listening to these amazing women that have given you guys advice throughout the day today. There's so many organizations in our community, like Dress for Success, my nonprofit Infinite Horizon, where we are focused on empowering women, right, and Latino leaders. We have Upskill that they support healthcare organizations with scholarships, non-traditional students. So how are you getting plugged into these communities to be able to build your network, be able to learn new things, and have people that can give you that direct feedback as you move towards your dream? So that's what I would say.
Thank you. All right, let's talk about some practical actions we can take. And Ashley, I'll start off with you again. What are a few small practical actions somebody can start taking today that can compound over time?
Yeah. I would say getting a little vulnerable as well. Sometimes my dreams are so big that I want them to happen overnight. And I think something that I have to remind myself of is that it happens in consistent actions day over day, and not every master was once a beginner, right? So for me, I have four. One is own your story. So how are you telling your story? And don't assume that your work speaks for itself, right? Like we can work hard behind the scenes, but how are we advocating for ourselves deliberately and telling our story to the people that are making those career decisions on our behalf? And a way that you could start small is sending weekly emails to your leader, right? So, like for me, I am very vocal with my leader and I tell him, hey, I'm working on this. And I send weekly recaps of things that I'm proud of or things that I've been working on. Number two, relationships. And I'm going to hit on this a lot through this conversation, but I think I wouldn't be where I am today without the amazing women and friends that I've had around me that have invested into me and have given me real, honest feedback as I progress in my career. So how are you building those relationships with intention? And you can start small as well. Something that I've tried for me is something called coffee chats, which is really simple. I'll just put 30 minutes on someone's calendar and I'll just sit down with them and have coffee. And it's not even about business, right? It's just getting to know that person as a person. Number three, I would say seek visibility. So, how are you raising your hand for projects that other people don't want to step up to the plate to, right? Things that might be a little bit more complicated, but how are you seeking that visibility for projects that matter to your leadership? And then lastly, I would say this one's a little hard for me at times, but how are you getting feedback? And I'm very vocal to my leaders of, hey, if you see something that I have an opportunity in development, give me feedback real time because that's the only way that I can grow. And something that I've done in the past with my direct reports is that we have weekly one-on-ones and I give them the opportunity to give me feedback and I give them feedback real time, right? Because that's how you're going to grow. And I'll give you guys a little story. So for me, I grew up in a household that was very traditional Hispanic household where I was taught my whole life, Ashley, be humble. So when I entered the corporate world, I used to work for Amazon Robotics. I came in my early 20s as a manager, and I would call everyone, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, all the time. And I remember my friend now at the time, she was my boss, Alex Grazier, love her to death. She told me, Ashley, you need to stop telling people, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. In a way, I was putting myself beneath my peers, and they were my peers, right? So even though that feedback to me, it wasn't anything bad that I was doing. For me, it was like common Southern hospitality growing up in Arkansas. But it was feedback that I needed to hear to be able to progress as a leader. But yeah, so to just wrap it up really quickly, number one, own your story. Number two, be intentional with the relationships that you're building. Seek visibility, raise your hand for projects others do not want to do. And lastly, ask for feedback because the faster that you get that feedback, the faster that you will grow.
That's a great list. Yeah. Stephanie, which of those do you think makes the biggest difference?
First of all, Ashley stole my answer. But what I will say is I kind of build on what you said. So I think absolutely seeking feedback. And it's easier said than done, okay? Because feedback sometimes hurts. And it's figuring out how can you take it and absorb it and learn from it, even if you don't agree with it. Because let me tell you, some of the feedback I get, like I don't always agree with it, but that person has that perception, and it's my job to kind of try to change that perception. But the other thing that I think is a good practical action is continuing to build relationships before you need them.
Mm.
Because that is something that it's going to benefit you. And when you're building relationships, don't always go into it with what can they do for me. Go into it with what you can do for them, because that's going to build a deeper connection and a stronger relationship than you kind of always asking for something from somebody else. When you meet people, constantly think, what can you do for them?
Mhm. Perfect. Julie, from your perspective, what really stands out when you see something that employees are doing that's notable from an advancement perspective?
When you talk about feedback and mastery of skills, really what stands out to me is someone who take complete ownership of a project where they're giving continuous feedback updates where I don't have to prompt them to, where are we? Them taking, I have, I'm working with a couple of people I'm mentoring now, and when I have to like continually ask for that, and one gentleman is, I mean, he's answering my questions before I even ask him. So I think, just giving that real time feedback, that shows initiative, that shows that you own it, you have passion for it. So that's what I look for.
And my next question kind of goes back to the momentum over movement. But Julie, I'll ask you, when a new opportunity comes up, how do you evaluate whether it's the right move for long-term growth? And it sounds like for you, like your career's taken a little different turn than maybe you originally
Yeah.
planned. So you had to make some of those evaluations to decide what your next move was.
Well, if it was good for my own personal growth, it got me out of my comfort zone and challenged me. Sorry. Okay. So, if I would look at every opportunity. I would say yes. I always I'm a yes, kind of a yes person, unless it wasn't good for my family. And if it wasn't good for me personally, as maybe it's something way outside, of, of my comfort zone. But if it got me out of my comfort zone, that's when I knew I would grow. And that is what I've done all my career, being a nurse and not a typical leader in healthcare who is a male who went to school with and got their MBA or their master's in healthcare administration. I have my master's in nursing. So everything I did was out of my comfort zone, and I had to work twice as hard to make things happen. But I'm so passionate about what I do. I really, everything I strive for every day has to do with our patients. So that's my driving force. And just I would just say get out of your comfort zone. And and even if it's something you really wouldn't like, maybe it's not your ideal job, the next job is going to be there for you if you do that.
Thanks for letting us know. We'll try to speak louder. Stephanie, what do people often get wrong when evaluating opportunities?
So a couple of things. I would build on a little bit what Julie said, and it kind of reminded me of a story about always it's hard to do again, but lean toward the hard things because if something's easy, you are not growing. And that is really hard to, kind of absorb because I mean, you want to kind of sometimes go toward the easier things, right? But one of the first really, I will say, big position I took where I was leading a team, I was nervous because, and I had two job offers at the same company. It was with Walmart. And one, I knew I could do this job, like same level, same pay, but I could do this job. I could do it with like, and actually Piper probably remembers this position. I could do this job. It was overseeing hourly recruiting, and was overseeing our temporary services function for a while. Very natural transition. So I had that job offer, but then I had another job offer that was overseeing all of the finance and accounting recruitment for all of Walmart, and that was going to be harder. It was going to be much harder. And I chose and actually met with this guy who I kind of saw as a mentor. And he said, which one's harder? And I said, well, the finance one. And he said, choose that one. And I did, and I'm glad I did because it was definitely a lot more growing moments. It was harder, and guys, it was harder. I had a new baby. It was not the right time, but sometimes it's not always going to be the right time. But you kind of have to keep your long term goals in mind, still maintaining that work life balance with your family. But you have to really think about those long term goals and where you want to be, and what position is going to get you to that long term goal much faster.
Thank you. And Ashley, how do you advise people who may have less visible options to choose from?
I say I would reframe this instead of saying what options do I have. I would say what options can I create and build, right? Because many times, a lot of opportunities are not going to be formally posted; they're going to be built. So three right here that I have for y'all is kind of going back to what I said last time, but how are you raising your hand for those projects and expanding your scope to be able to solve problems that matter to leadership? Number two, the relationship piece. I'm going to keep coming back to that because I just think it's so pivotal to, especially us as women, right? But how are you being intentional about the relationships that you're building, especially with those decision makers that will support you in your career? And then lastly, I would say proximity, right? How close are you to these decision makers? Are they seeing the work that you're doing, what you're executing, the questions that you're asking? And I would say if the options feel limited, the strategy is not to wait, it's to create them yourselves. And I would say also, if you're like, I don't even know how to create that myself, please, please, please do not hesitate to reach out. InfiniteHerizon.com. Come find me after this. I'll get on a one-on-one call with you. We can go get coffee and we can brainstorm together to see how we can make those opportunities be built for you guys.
That's great. Okay, so we've talked about what individuals can do. Now we're going to zoom out for a minute and we're going to talk about the barriers that still impact upward mobility and how we can navigate those. So, Stephanie, I'll start with you. What barriers still impact upward mobility, and how can individuals navigate systems such as workplace structures and decision making that wasn't designed with them in mind?
Very
The big question.
Yeah.
What I would say is, I mean, I'm going to be real with you guys. There's always going to be barriers, whether it's going to be, I mean, biases are still there, and legacy ways of working, just different. It's always going to be there. I think the biggest thing that I would say is building that I would do, and I have done, is building my internal network of advocates, and that's going to be, there's networking and all of that, but you know, in your career, you really figure out who you can trust and who's going to advocate for you, because they're not everyone you can trust. Okay. And we all know that. And that's another topic. We need to lift each other up and all the things. But what I would say is figuring out who's going to be your advocate, locking in with them. And, I still struggle with, finding my advocate, especially it gets harder. I do feel like as you go higher in the organization, but figuring out how you can, again, assemble that network, have people that are going to advocate for you when you're not in the room. That is very important, because it is it's more valuable for someone else to say that you're great than for you to say that you're great.
Ashley, what's one thing that people often do not realize about how advancement decisions actually get made?
I would say that it's not based on performance alone, and I had to learn this the hard way when I worked at Amazon, because I had a perception that, man, if I just put in all these hours, if I stay late, if I work super hard, if I deliver results, like the KPIs look great, they're gonna promote me, and that's not true. And while it is true for some, it's not true for others, which is unfortunate, right? So visibility and perception are a huge deal when it comes to how these decisions are made. Once again, how are you telling that story of the cross-functional stakeholders that you're influencing, right? The projects that you're leading. I would say, how are you developing people? Because many times I think we become SMEs of our trade. We're very proud of being the SME of the SMEs. But then if you have a bad leader and they're scared of losing you and they don't promote you for that reason, then you're stuck, right? So how do you develop others, especially if you have direct reports, to be able to have those skills in that knowledge that you currently have, right? And then I would say perception management. How are you showing up to work? Are you showing up with your hair all in tangles? This is a TikTok shop dress. You don't have to go super expensive or anything, but worry about how you walk into those rooms and how you're showing up at work or those places that matter. And then lastly, I would say as well, when things don't go your way, there's a lot of change. Change is constant. What is your reaction to those things? Is it very visible on your face that you're upset? You're gonna go talk to your coworker, and then they tell someone else. Perception is key, right? And then the last thing I would say is be very vocal to your leadership about what your goals are. And for me, like, I would say my goals and my dreams may sound crazy when I say them out loud sometimes, but I also believe that mindset becomes reality, or your mindset is what becomes reality, right? So when I talk to my leaders, I'm like, I want to be a CEO at Walmart. You know what? If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, then that's God's plan, right? But I'm very vocal about what my goals are, because then I can hold my leader accountable through my weekly one-on-ones or whatever cadence you might have with that leader. Be like, hey man, like, look, this is what my goal is. How am I tracking towards that goal and getting opportunities? And just by being vocal in that way, I've been able to, just at Walmart, join mentor circles of like community of leaders that I just joined one that's a 2-year mentor circle. But I wouldn't have had that opportunity if I wouldn't have told my boss, hey, I want to be able to be in mentor circles. I have this goal, etc. So don't be afraid to share your dreams. Obviously, you have to be careful who you tell people stuff sometimes, but be vocal about it. And yeah, that's what I have.
Thank you. Yeah. Julie, quickly, what responsibility do leaders have in changing these systems?
Well, one, building those relationships with others and empowering your team, not being the micromanager of every project. I think all of you guys have probably had a boss that's been a micromanager. I'll tell a story. And I think then if you have a boss that's a micromanager, then you're a micromanager because you're being micromanaged. So I think it's very important that we as leaders empower people to make decisions and allow them to fail. Right now I'm getting ready to do a book club with my leadership team about failing forward. And it's okay to fail. We just have to learn from it and move on. So failing forward or failing faster, however you want to say, but allowing people to fail and to learn from it and get the feedback. So that's what I'm saying.
All right. Ashley, you mentioned mindset. And given the realities that we just hit on about the barriers, let's shift back to actually what is in our control and what mindset helps people still move forward. So, Ashley, I'll start off with you with this question. And we've talked about actions, but what mindset shifts are most important when stepping into a new level of responsibility or pursuing advancement?
It's a good question. I actually just switched my scope at work. This is actually very, very recent for me, but I would say number one is change is constant, right? So you have to be very aware that change is constant when you step into a new field, and be open to listening to new ideas and be open to failing. Because I think many times, at least for me, when I got promoted to director, I was one of the youngest directors at Walmart. So I came in and I was like, I got to prove that they hired me for the right reason. I have peers that have been with the company for 30 years, and here's me with the company 2 years, right? So imposter syndrome really started hitting me hard. And I wanted to show them, like, hey, yeah, you hired me for the right reason. But no, you have to be okay with failing and being able to pivot quickly when that does happen. And because of that, right, listen to new ideas. Like, people that are there, like, don't ever think that because of your level you know everything, because you don't. Like, you have to be willing to listen to the people. Like, for me right now, coming into this role, I'm supporting global operations of how do we advance our acceleration from an e-commerce standpoint globally, right? So I'm not thinking up here strategy level. I'm thinking, how does this affect associates? I'm going through and reading process guides of how my associates in the stores will be affected by decisions that I could make, right? So be willing to learn. Like, I can say, oh yeah, I know e-commerce. That's what my whole career has been about, supply chain. But no, always be willing to learn, go down to the associate level and the people that you're affecting by the strategies that you're putting into place. And I'm coming back to people because many times, and I think you hit at this in the beginning, um, the first time you talk to someone, are you asking something from them? Are you? I don't think that's a good move, y'all. So I would say, how are you investing into getting to know people around you? So, like, for me, like I told you guys earlier, I'll do coffee chats. When I join a new team, I don't care the level of the person. I don't care if I'll talk to them one time. I Every person that I have under that organization that I might be reporting to, I put a one-on-one with them and I get to know them. And it's not even about business, because the business part will come naturally. For me, it's who are you as a person and what matters to you. And I think many times, like, obviously, some people are not comfortable sharing things about their lives, but for me, I share things that I am, that are core to my identity, right? The first generation Latina. I grew up in Arkansas. I really care about my family. I have a nonprofit. All of these things. I love biking. I love fitness. And naturally, when you start talking to people, you find something in common. In Arkansas, it's usually the biking thing that you find in common. But I would say be open to change, be okay with failing, invest in people and get to know them, and be willing to learn. And the last thing that I would leave you with, something that I was taught early on in my career, is when you put people first, success will always follow. So just keep that in mind.
That's great.
Yep.
And Julie, I know from your career from nursing to CEO, mindset probably was a pretty big part of how you transitioned through all of that. So, from your perspective, what mindset differentiates those who successfully step into leadership?
Persistent, being persistent, that resilient, getting out of your own head. I was just talking to a lady, a sweet lady in this room this week about getting in your own head, that imposter syndrome, thinking that before you even consider going up the next level, you've already said, well, I'm not gonna do this. And again, it's back being okay, being ready to fail and be okay with it and move on, but not saying yes or applying for an opportunity because you might fail. And that's what I've been telling myself lately. I don't want to fail, so I'm just going to say no. I'm just going to stand back in the corner and just wait for things to come to me. I have to fail faster, fail forward, and then move on. And so that's what I would tell everyone. Again, get out of your head, because our head and our mind is going to tell us the worst.
That's good.
For our greatest critic.
Greatest critic.
And Stephanie, what would you add to that as far as how you see people holding themselves back?
Yeah. I think people just need to, and you touched on this a little bit. I think people especially women, get comfy with being uncomfy. Because whenever you're, going for another role, like you're never going to be 100% ready. Like no one is ever 100% ready. But sometimes we get in our own heads and think like, oh, I got to have this experience. It says I need this. I don't have that. Like just say, raise your hand and say, I can do it. I will tell you guys leading HR for our chicken segment. And Tyson, friends, you're going to laugh at this. But the leader that I support was like, Stephanie, we were real worried because he's like, I have zero chicken experience, zero. And so my entire career has been corporate. And so, but he actually just recently gave me this feedback and said, but the reason this works is because you were vulnerable. And so if you go in and just, act like you own everything and you know what you're doing, even to your team, like that doesn't work. Listen, I did that with my very first team, disaster. And so I think going in and figuring out, um, supporting them, saying like, how can I support you? I'm here to learn. Just be vulnerable. And that's hard to do because you're like, I'm a leader. I should lead everybody. Right. And it's like, well, you need to be vulnerable first. And you need to show your team that you're ready to learn because you're not going to know everything going into that position, but you will learn it and it will be fine. But just figuring out how to make your mindset be vulnerable and you'll get ready and you'll get there.
It's great. A lot of great input as far as getting out of our comfort zone, getting comfy with being uncomfy, building our network before we need them, getting out of our own heads, making that effort. The coffee chats, like that's casual. That's pretty easy to do. And like you suggested, talking about what we have in common helps kind of bridge the gap. And so it's not just going in to talk about what their career is and what they might be able to do for you. It's just connecting with people, and then that can lead to the next right thing. So well, we've definitely covered a lot, from actions that you can take to how to make right decisions for yourself, how to navigate the real barriers and mindset shifts. So we're going to bring it all together. And all of our panelists, I'm going to ask you this question as we kind of wrap up, and then we'll go into taking questions. But if we had just one key takeaway, and if somebody here wants to increase their upward mobility starting right now this year, what is the one thing that you would tell them to focus on? Start with you.
Relationships. Because I'll give an example. I've been with 34 years of being a nurse to CEO. I 100% believe that my relationships with physicians and the community has impacted where I am. And if I was in a meeting with all the chamber presidents, with my new future boss, and those relationships that I've created over 34 years, he said, Julie, I've received over 15 emails, text messages, and phone calls about you and your work and your ethic. That's relationships. So that would be what I said.
Yeah, and I would piggyback off kind of the similar thing, but what organizations are you getting plugged into, right? And like I said in the beginning, you guys are already here today with Dress for Success and joining this forum. But I would say there's so many great organizations in our community that are here to support you and give you resources and give you access and give you information. We have Upskill that I mentioned earlier today. We have the Women's Empowerment Network. We have Dress for Success, Serve to Perform, Next Up, Infinite Horizon, right? So how are you plugging into these communities? And we like, at least for me, from an Infinite Horizon standpoint, I want to help people. Like, bring me your resumes. I want to give you free resume reviews, career mentorship, please. So if you guys need any support at all, please know that there's so many people here that want to support you along the way, and you don't have to do it alone.
We'll wrap up with yours.
They stole mine again. So I think, relationship building and really strategic networking, I would say, are absolutely key. And so I'll add a kind of a third component. So hopefully you can take these three things away. You also have to crush the job you're in. And so, all this, is good, but you still have to do a good job in your current role, right? Because that does add to it. Yes, performance isn't everything, but it is something. And so you have to figure out what are those moments in your job that are going to grow yourself. Like lean towards some of those stretch opportunities. You don't have to ask for them always, but just figuring out how you can operate above and beyond, because And I will tell you, a pet peeve of mine is when people say, like, that's not my job description. And oh God, it stresses me out. And so, because like nothing is in our job description.
Yeah.
But figuring out what are those things that are just above and beyond that you could do in your current role to grow yourself. It may not be seen, and that's okay. But you will be growing, and that's what matters.
Great advice. Well, before we get into questions, I just want to thank you guys because you were all vulnerable today. And thank you for showing up and giving us this great feedback and advice and guidance. And hopefully, it's led to some good questions from our fabulous audience. So, your turn to speak loudly. So, if you have a question, please stand up so we can see your beautiful face. If you're not on the front row, but even if you are, maybe turn around a little bit. But please ask away.